please focus. Please, please, please. Make sure you know the quadrants and whether they're positive, negative, or both. That really ends up being a help, especially when you start filling out all of these things. And that's a lot of points. A lot of people reverse those because they didn't really understand this piece. These signs right there are very critical. It means when you put coordinate points, they're both going to be negative. When you put coordinate points, only the x's will be negative, the y's will be positive on all of those. So make sure you're knowing how to do those. Then, I know I went over this yesterday, but I'm going to do this again today. The next thing I want you to make sure that you know how to label correctly. A lot of people reverse those. A lot of people put this as 0, 1. But look it. This is how you tell the difference. This is the x-axis. That's the x value. We went from 0 to 1. It's right here on the paper. On the x-axis, we're at 1. And up here, we're on the y-axis. This is the y value. In the left quadrant right over here, this is -1 on the x-axis. There's the x. And then down here, we're down at -1. We went down on the y-axis. So that's how you keep that straight. Make sure that you know how to do that. All right? Then, finally, again, not marking them off, count by 90s. 0, 90, plus 90 is 180, plus another 90 is 270, plus another 90 is 360. So that's easy. Each quadrant is 90 degrees. Makes sense because those are all right angles. All right, so there's that. Then we're going to look at the radians. Well, if you start at 0, that's 0 pi, okay? And all the way around is 2 pi, so halfway around is 1 pi. Well, if a pi is cut up into 4 pieces, and if this is 2, and this is considered 1, then up here is 1/2, and down here is 1/2, also called 3/2. In fact, if you want, you could put pi as 2/2. And if you subtract 1, you get 1/2, or just pi/2. And then if you add 1, you get 3 pi/2. Then the very last thing that I want you doing, and that's this week. Next week, we'll kind of do all of this stuff. What you're doing is you're saying, all right, we're going to break 2 pi. So 2 pi is the same as 12/6, 12 pi/6, 8 pi/4, 6 pi/3. And over here, we're going to break those values. They all say pi, but this one says 6/6, 4/4, 3/3, 2/2. And then from right here, you're going to subtract 1 pi/6. And you always start with the 6's. The 6's are always the first fraction closest to the denominator. We subtracted 1, and now we're going to add 1 to that 6. And then you're going to do the same thing with the pi/4. You're going to subtract 1, and that becomes 4 pi/4. I didn't subtract 1. That's going to become 3 pi/4. And then you're going to add 1. And when you're adding 1, you're really adding 1 pi/4. So it's 4 pi/4 plus 1 pi over 4, well, that's 5 pi over 4. And then for the pi thirds, if pi is 3 over 3, subtract 1 pi over 3, you've got 2 pi over 3. And if you add 1 to the 3, 1 pi third, you're going to add. I mean, this will become 4 pi over 3. Boom! Half of that is already done with the pi's. And over here, 0 plus, that's just 1 pi 6, 1 pi fourth, 1 pi third. In the fourth quadrant, remember, here's all of our 2 pi's. You just, because we're going in this direction, we're subtracting. 12 subtract 1 is 11 pi 6. 8 pi 4 subtract 1, 7 pi fourths. 6 pi thirds subtract 1 pi third, 5 pi thirds. Now we're just ready to do all of the angles. So here on the first quadrant, remember, all of these angles are either 30, 60, whoa, I didn't put the one in between, 45, or 60-degree angle. So the one closest to the x-axis, this angle right here, is 30 degrees. Then this angle right here, next bigger than 30 is 45. Next bigger is 60 degrees, that angle. So now, the one closest, we're going to subtract 30. We get 150 degrees. We're going to add 30 degrees, 210 degrees. Then we're going to subtract 45 from 180. We get 135 degrees. And we're going to add 45 degrees. And that gives us 225 degrees. And then subtract 60. You don't have to do all this, by the way. This part you don't have to do. But that's just what you're doing on the calculator in your head. 180 subtract 60 is 120. 180 plus 60 is 240. In the fourth quadrant, all the way around is 360. So we're going to subtract 30. We're going to subtract 45. And we're going to subtract 60. All from 360. That's what I want you focusing on today, is that stuff. All right. Have fun.